Hey guys, Josh Kent with US Arms Company. I'm here today to talk to you guys about cleaning the AR-15 platform. We're going to be using one of our Champion Gen 2 rifles today to clean. This weapon was used in a sniper competition recently, and so now we're going to use this as a time to kind of go through a legitimate full cleaning of the AR-15 platform. So we're going to go through the things that you need, items, resources that you would need to clean your weapon system thoroughly. We're going to talk about the reasons why you clean the AR-15 the way we're going to teach you, and then we're going to go through the steps to which you're going to take to clean the AR-15 thoroughly from beginning to end. So we appreciate you guys coming back, and we'll go through the rest of the video on the things that you need coming up. Hey guys, so we're going to cover all of the resources that you're going to need to clean the AR-15 platform. So if you bring it in close, we're going to cover some of the items that we use to fully clean our weapon system. So starting from the back, we have Hops 9 bore cleaner. Now to cover some of the differences in bore cleaning solvent, you have copper solvent, which strips pieces of copper that would embed itself in the rifle's barrel. It would strip that out and give you back to the bare metal again, something like 762 Swedes, those solvents that have a lot of ammonia in them. Right here we have just basically a powder fouling solvent with Hops 9, but they also do, that same company makes a copper solvent as well. So it depends on how many rounds that you have through the gun. So if you have somewhere over the number, what we kind of take is like 450 rounds through the rifle's barrel. Since you've cleaned it, we would recommend that you use a copper solvent also. And in doing so, when you use the copper solvent, you have to let it sit in the barrel for probably about 5 to 10 minutes to let it get a good hold on that copper so that you can lift it out. But here today we're going to use Hops number 9. We like it. It's a good fouling solvent. We don't have a whole lot of rounds through it, so we're not going to take the copper out of the gun right now. Next we have lubricant, which is going to be Extreme Weapons lubricant. Slip 2000. We like it a lot. It's a great lubricant. It has a wide operating range. I think it's like from negative 110 to 1250 degrees before it starts to burn off. So that gives us a good wide operating range. It has great viscosity and works well in semi-automatic platforms or direct impingement platforms like the AR-15 or this setup here. I realize that there are piston setups. Works great in those also. We're going to continue down to, we have some wipe down rags. We have a one-piece J. Dewey cleaning rod with the punch jag for mopping out the bore with some of our patches. And again, these jags right here, they thread on directly to the one-piece rod. And the one good thing about these rods is that they run on a bearing system. So as the patch is going down the bore, or your bore brush is going down the bore, it allows the rod to rotate on an axis to allow your patch or your bore brush to engage those lands and grooves thoroughly without kind of skidding down the bore. So this is really a great rod to have to get a good solid cleaning, and we recommend them. So or any rod that has a good bearing that will allow your bore brush and your patches to engage those lands and grooves. Next, we have two different size punches. I have one small punch to help disassemble the bolt carrier group. So you have that firing pin, retaining pin. Sometimes if you got really big fingers, it's difficult to get in there and remove it. A small punch just helps you remove that cotter pin so that you can help with ease of disassembly for the bolt carrier group. And second, I have a bigger punch for our Champion series or even the Utah and the Pro. Our receivers fit very well together, and sometimes it can be difficult. You have to apply a little more pressure to the takedown pin, so we just use a punch to help push that out. All right, here we have a push jag for the patches. I have a 20 caliber bore brush and the fitting jag or fitting piece that goes on the end of the rod that connects the bore brush to the J. Dewey cleaning rod. I have my attachment here that's going to sit in my lower receiver, and this little piece right here is really nice to have. It aids, it kind of speeds you up a little bit, but it's not necessarily you have to have it. It's optional, but it really helps you as it stages the bore of the weapon kind of down, and it allows the bore solvent to kind of drain down out of the bore instead of back into your chamber. Okay, so I would really recommend one of these. J. Dewey makes this one, but there are other companies out there that make them. Here we have 20 caliber patches. May sound kind of silly, but you don't want too big of a patch because you may get it stuck in your chamber or your bore. So make sure that you're using the right style patch, because if you do get these wedged in there, you could damage your cleaning rod, you could damage your chamber. There's just all kinds of problems that could go into the amount of pressure, bearing pressure between the patch and the bore. So use the right size patch that gives a good clean, and you're able to get it out of the gun. Here we have a action rod. So we have a chamber brush on the end of this one. We have two of them. So I have a chamber brush and a chamber mop. Okay. So once I've cleaned the bore, I'm going to come back behind myself and clean out the chamber. So the chamber brush here is, we have a two-piece brush essentially. We have one for the chamber to kind of scrub out any of the carbon, brass buildup, fouling from powder from the ejection or the extraction, of the case. Sometimes you'll have a vacuum that pulls gunpowder residue back into the chamber. So this brush right here is really good to clean that out, get it back to the bare metal, especially if you have a matched chamber like this one. And then the secondary portion of the brush where you see the steel bristles are to clean out the barrel extension. We move on to the bore mop. Again, once we've cleaned it out, we're going to have a little bit of residue left. So anytime you're done cleaning something, you want to wipe it down. Like the rags here we have for the bolt carrier group. Essentially, that's what this chamber mop is. It's to wipe up anything left, and it gives it that good mirror finish at the end of the cleaning. And lastly, we have a mil-spec bore brush. You have large bristles to do some of your major cleaning over large surfaced areas, and then your small bristles here to get into those finer areas, something that you couldn't really reach your hand in, or maybe you need a little bit more pressure than what you could get with a Q-tip. These brushes are perfect for that. You can bring more to the table if you want, but honestly, these right here are the bare necessities to clean the rifle over any issues with cleaning that we could foresee you having. So if you have this right here, starting off to clean your weapon system, you're good to go in our book. Again, there are other things out there that you can bring to the table. This is what we would essentially say would be the bare minimum to clean, get a full clean on your AR platform. Next thing we're going to cover are going to be the reasons why you clean it, so stay with us. All right, guys, in this portion right here, where I'm going to talk about the reasons why we clean the AR-15 platform, okay? It used to be said that the AR-15, you could fire it dirty and you would never have any issues with it. We all know that that is a fallacy and pretty much a lie, okay? Any mechanical device, if you let it run long enough, it'll get dirty enough to fail, okay? So the things that we look at, the barrel extension, our bolt carrier group, trigger, all of these operating mechanisms that make our weapon system function, we have to keep them clean to a certain degree. So the barrel, we clean it because of fouling buildup. Fouling buildup opens our accuracy, okay? We want to keep our barrel with copper in it, but up to a certain point, if we keep backfilling it, our groups will open up. So that's the reason why we clean the barrel. The chamber, buildup in the chamber can cause head spacing issues, especially if you're shooting suppressed. So we want to make sure that we keep a chamber good and clean. We move back to the barrel extension. Anything, brass shavings, sometimes a rim can break off and you get these pieces of brass that built up in there, and if you've got a good tight headspace, that stuff can hinder or cause the operation or function of the weapon system to either cease or damage itself. So we want to clean those out. Moving back to the bolt carrier group, we have things like carbon buildup behind the firing pin. So as on a gas impingement system like this here, the gas flows back into the bolt carrier group, and that expansion in that chamber, the gas has to either bleed out these two relief holes, or it will bleed out back around or back through the firing pin. And if we're not careful, that carbon builds up on the firing pin, and it can change the stroke or the depth to which that firing pin can extend itself, and you get a light strike. So we always want to make sure that we clean those. We want to make sure that our cam pin and our bolts are cleaned and wiped down, and they don't have any buildup or debris on or in them, so that we have a good clean cycling function. Especially the bolt, the back of the bolt lugs need to be clean so that we get a good locking headspace and it doesn't change our headspace or cause any issues there. As we move down into the trigger area, we want to just make sure that we can just wipe that trigger out, that there is no debris between the primary and secondary sear of the trigger, and that it's functioning properly. Usually a couple of drops of oil after a wipe down is really all your trigger needs, but those are the steps that we're going to cover. Stay tuned for the steps to which we're going to take you through the steps next. So thanks for hanging around. Okay guys, so now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of cleaning the weapon system. So we've talked about what you need, the reasons why we clean the AR-15 platform, and so now we're going to go into actually cleaning the weapon system. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that the weapon system is clear, free of ammunition. We point the gun in the safe direction, and we clear the weapon system. We're going to lock the bolt to the rear. Check it, check the chamber, magazine well, bolt face, and now we can let the bolt go forward and we can start disassembling or slightly disassembling the weapon. So here for cam lock, we got to release the cam lever into the down position. We're going to take that large punch that we have and depress the takedown pin, which is going to allow our upper receiver group to kind of tilt forward. And that's kind of where we want it to be anyway, so that any solvent that we use will drain out of the barrel. So we're going to pull this charging handle to the rear, which is going to bring our bolt carrier group, and now we have the bolt carrier group in hand. So you can just push the charging handle back into the forward position. Now this piece here that we showed you earlier, this upper receiver kind of retaining band here, we're just going to hook it in and then drop that down to the rear and then recapture this piece here with the takedown pin. And so now this retains our upper receiver for us. We're able to clean the chamber, clean the bore without the upper receiver flopping around on us, so we have control of it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to take our cleaning rod and we want to put a scrub brush or bore brush, which is this 20 caliber bore brush here. We want to go ahead and place that on our cleaning rod and give the bore, go ahead and break anything that we have in the bore loose, just by making a few passes back and forth, loosening any of the copper, the fouling within the bore. Go ahead and loosen it up, and then the next thing we're going to push through is a solvent patch. Okay guys, the next step is going to be pushing a solvent patch through the bore so that the solvent can get into the lands and grooves and clean out the copper or the fouling that is in the barrel. Okay, so we're going to put the patch on our push jag. We're going to start from the chamber or the rear of the upper receiver, and we're just going to push, get this thing started, and then we're just going to push that patch through our bore out the end. And once we get that out, we'll take that patch, remove it, and then pull our push rod out back of the chamber. And now we're going to let that solvent sit for a couple of minutes so that it gets into the pores, and then we're going to re-scrub the barrel again. Okay guys, the next step, we're going to reapply the scrub brush to our cleaning rod, and we're going to hit this bore again one more time, giving a couple of back and forth strokes. Now again, you'll know when the bore is actually clean, as you'll feel grit, or it'll be difficult to push the bore brush through the bore initially, and it'll kind of smooth out. Once you feel that smooth operation of the bore brush passing through the lands and the grooves, you know that you've got a good scrub, and now you're ready to start pushing dry patches out the bore. All right, next step, we're going to start pushing our dry patches out the bore. But what we also want to do is we want to take a clean shop rag or something like that, wipe our cleaning rod down, taking any excess solvent off of that, because again, we're trying to make the bore dry with dry patches, and it is kind of pointless if we don't take some of the solvent off of our cleaning tool. So we're going to use a dry patch, And again, from chamber to muzzle is how we're going to clean this. Start in, get it started, and it passes through pretty easy. And you guys will see that this first patch is pretty dirty. And as we continue along, and if we got really close, you can see some flakes of copper that are actually in the patch, or even flakes of brass that are in the patch that the patch is actually picking up and cleaning out. So you'll keep making passes with your patches until you get a clean patch at the end. All right, so I'm just going to push one or two more through and call that good. You ain't even got to do this. Boom. See. All right. Okay, guys. So now we've cleaned the bore. Now we're going to take our bolt carrier group. We're going to strip it down real quick. So again, we have our firing pin, retaining pin. We're going to strip that out with our small punch. Now we can set this, kind of tap it on the ground, and our firing pin. We depress our bolt to the rear, rotate the cam pin 90 degrees. It's kind of dirty, so it's being kind of a pain to rotate. But there's our cam pin, and then we're able to remove our bolt from here. All right, so now we have a stripped bolt carrier group. We always want to inspect our parts, so check the gas carry key, make sure that it's not loose or wobbling. And now we can start wiping down and cleaning our bolt carrier group. One of the things that I would recommend is some of the shop rags that you have. You can use some of your hot solvent on your shop rag to help wipe off some of the carbon that is built up, especially on the exterior of the bolt carrier group. And then we'll get into a better cleaning of your bolt, of just your wipe down and your scrubbing of parts. So one of the big places that you should scrub or make sure that you get carbon off of, if we take a look at the firing pin, we don't want any carbon built up on this surface, as it's going to change the firing pin protrusion of our firing pin. So we want to make sure that this is clean metal surface when we go to reassemble it. The next place we want to make sure that we clean is right here at the back of the bolt. All right, carbon builds up right there pretty frequently as the gas, this is where the gas kind of gets impinged in between the bolt carrier group and the back of this bolt. So as you clean these, understand that most of the bolt carrier group is a wipe down, but those two places we want to make sure, here at the back of the bolt and here on the back of the firing pin, that we scrub really well and make sure that they're smooth so that we have a good smooth operation of our bolt carrier group. Okay guys, we've disassembled and wiped down the bolt carrier group. Again, you can use some of the solvent and shop rag to wipe down most of your parts in here and wiping out the interior of the bolt carrier group. The next thing we want to cover is going to be the extractor. So after we've cleaned the face of the bolt, wiped it down as good as we can, you can use a Q-tip or even the shop rag. We want to take a small punch and depress out the extractor pin, and then remove the extractor, examine our extractor spring and the enhanced, I forget the full name of this, but it's basically just a small rubber donut that goes around there and gives some additional tension to the extractor. So we want to make sure that we wipe this down, that the extractor has no buildup or brass inside the extractor arm right there. So if there is any, you just take your punch and kind of just scrub it out. You don't want to get on it too hard, just enough to get any of the excess out, and then you can wipe it down with the shop rag. Okay. Next thing we want to do to reassemble, we just fit this back onto the bolt, depress slightly to where we get this alignment, and then fit our pin in there till we get flush on both sides. The last thing we want to do is make sure that all of the gas rings are offset from one another. So there are 3 gas rings total, and we just want to make sure that they are offset. If they ever get aligned, you'll get gas seepage and you'll start getting short strokes. So that's how we clean the extractor, and just a wipe down on the bolt face. As you guys can see, the exterior of the bolt carrier group has been wiped down. It looks good. It's ready to be reassembled. Same with our firing pin retaining pin, and our cam pin. So on assembly, we take the bolt, we set our extractor to the right hand side, and we make sure that the cam pin hole is at the rearward position. We're going to take this cam just like we disassembled it, We're going to set it in there at a 90-degree turn, and we're going to turn it. We move the bolt forward and we turn it 90 degrees. So with our bolt in the forward position, we can now, and the cam pin turned, we can now drop our firing pin back into place. You want to make sure that you press it as far forward as you can, and then with it being pressed forward, we insert our firing pin, retaining pin. Now, the last step to confirm that you have a good seat, press your bolt holding the firing pin forward, and you should see the firing pin protrude through the face of the bolt. Once you've done this, give it a quick pop, make sure the firing pin doesn't fall out, and you should be good to go. The last thing you want to do is set your bolt carrier group up on your face. If your bolt drops with the weight of the bolt carrier group, we would recommend that you go ahead and replace your gas rings, but your gas ring should have enough tension that it should hold your bolt up. So if you ever do this and your bolt drops back, you know that it's time to replace your gas rings, okay? All right, next we're gonna go through the wipe down of the upper receiver. Okay guys, this step here is gonna be the wipe down and the chamber cleaning for the upper receiver. So what we wanna tackle with this first is we wanna take this action rod and our chamber brush with the muzzle down. Again, we're gonna insert our chamber brush and we're gonna start rotating till we get the chamber brush, or the silver portion of the chamber brush, just inside of the barrel extension. And we're just gonna turn this till we kind of feel it smooth out a little bit. All right, and you'll feel it when it's got tension. The same as when you used your bore brush. Once the debris in there, the copper, the fouling, all of that stuff starts to loosen up, you'll feel that the actual cleaning motion of what you're doing kind of smooths out. And using the chamber brush, we want to take this secondary portion right here, which stabilizes the brush at the rear of the receiver, and it keeps the brush from kind of walking around inside of the upper receiver, and therefore it's an easier operation of cleaning the chamber. It keeps the chamber brush in line in a straight position with the chamber instead of kind of wallowing around, and it actually makes your chamber brush last longer too. Okay, so we get that. Once we start getting that smooth feel to cleaning the chamber, we just kind of keep turning and slowly back the chamber brush out as we're turning till it is fully removed. All right, so from here, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our chamber mop and do the same thing. So we're going to insert the chamber mop into the barrel extension. Same thing, we're going to set our alignment piece right here into the rear of the upper receiver, and we're just going to turn until we see the back plate of the chamber mop go flush with the barrel extension. We give it a couple of turns, and what this is doing is it's mopping out all of that broken up material that was in the chamber and the barrel extension and mopping it up. And again, continue spinning and remove that chamber mop. So as we can see, the buildup here on the chamber mop that came out of the chamber. Last thing we want to do right here is mop up or wipe up any excess carbon or oil that may be on the internal of the upper receiver and lower receiver. So with the gun set up here, we can wipe it down thoroughly, and then we will reapply lubrication to the bolt carrier group and be ready for reassembly. So once you've got a good feel that you've wiped everything down, that it has a clean and neat appearance, our chamber's clean, our bore is clean, now we're ready for reassembly. So the parts we're going to lubricate here are the primary and secondary sears. So here we have the secondary, and the primary is down here at the base of the hammer. So that's where we want to put a single drop of oil would be plenty, and then we're going to move that oil around. So we're going to take a drop, set it here on the secondary, and then we can put it near the body of the hammer and let the oil roll down to the primary sear, or primary sear engagement. So we're going to cock that. We're going to make sure just kind of keep your thumb on the hammer, and then that way it doesn't just fall forward against your receiver. So you're going to just press it, let it engage the secondary with the trigger pulled to the rear. It should drop forward, going back to the primary, and just work that back and forth a couple of times to get that oil spread around over those bearing surfaces. Once you've done so, you can now reassemble your bolt carrier group, or not reassemble, but put the bolt carrier group back into the upper receiver. Now we're ready to close up the upper and lower receiver. Once we do this, and we're done, bolt carrier group is now in the upper receiver. We're going to close that down. Again, we're dealing with a cam lock weapon system, so we're going to push the takedown pin in, and now we're going to rotate the cam lock lever into the farthest up position, and now it's ready to go. Okay guys, we appreciate you being here with us for this full cleaning tutorial. Again, we covered the resources that you would need to get a full cleaning, the reasons why you clean those specific areas to keep the functionality of the weapon moving and mechanically good, and then the steps to which you would clean the weapon system. Again, we appreciate you being here. Stay tuned for more tutorials from U.S. Arms Company.